Hello, my fellow freedom-loving patriots everywhere. This is Nightwatch N8. I am currently camped out in the Nightwatch mobile bug-out command center. Yeah, it's still a work in progress, as you can see. I just had some thoughts. I thought I'd comment on this trucker convoy, this freedom convoy news going on in Ottawa, Canada. And I figured it's about time because, man, this thing is blown up everywhere, all over social media. It's like the latest, greatest craze, you know? I think it's outperforming Trump 2024 at this point. And yeah, literally every time I click on YouTube, I get like dozens and dozens and dozens of videos pop up about, you know, what the latest news is about this trucker convoy in Ottawa. And so I just thought I'd share a few thoughts. What's been coming to me lately is this idea of, you know, we are living in the age of social media engineered populist uprisings, right? Ever since I think the big one that kicked it off was the Arab Spring, which was, by all accounts, pretty much manufactured. A manufactured civil strife, civil uprising. And you know, a lot of these questions came up recently, it was a few months ago now, but Ron Johnson asked the heads of these different big tech monopolies like Zuckerberg, Dorsey at the time when he was still head of Twitter, and you know, he asked them the question bluntly, you know, do you think your platforms can interfere with elections?
Dorsey, you started your opening comments that you know, you think that people don't trust you. I agree with that. We don't trust you. You all say you're fair and you're consistent, you're neutral, you're unbiased. Mr. Dorsey, I think the most incredible answer I've seen so far in this hearing is when Senator Cruz asked, does Twitter have the ability to influence elections? Again, does Twitter have the ability to influence elections? You said no. Did you stick with that answer, that you don't even believe? And let's face it, you all believe that Russia has the ability to influence elections or interfere by using your social platforms. Mr. Dorsey, do you still deny that you don't have the ability to influence and interfere in our elections?
My answer was around people's choice around other communication channels.
No, your answer was, the question was, does Twitter have the ability to influence elections? You said no. Do you still stand by that answer?
Twitter as a company, no.
You don't think you have the ability by moderation policies, by, as Senator Lee would, and I would call it censoring, you know, what you do with the New York Post? You don't think that censorship, that moderation of policies, you don't think that influences elections by withholding what I believe is true information from the American public? You don't think that interferes in elections?
And I think it was Dorsey in particular said no, not at all. And I think Ron Johnson's response was, you know, how can it not, when you ban and censor all of the opposing views, you know, from the other side, obviously the right, and you know, he also drilled them on the question of, you know, how many of their employees lean left, and none of them would answer him in any detail other than Zuckerberg actually stuck his scrawny little neck out and said, yeah, probably, I would say there's more liberals left working for Facebook than people on the right. It's like, yeah, duh. I mean, pretty blatantly obvious statement there. No big revelation there out of Zuckerberg.
Would you say that the political ideology of the employees of your company is, you know, let's say 50-50, conservative versus liberal progressive, or do you think it's closer to 90% liberal, 10% conservative? We'll start with Mr. Dorsey.
As you mentioned, I don't know the makeup of our employees because it's not something we ask or focus on.
But just what do you think off the top of your head based on your chat rooms and kind of the people you talk to?
Not something I look for or look at.
Right. Okay, Mr. Pichai. So again, you want to, Mrs. Zuckerberg, will you answer the question honestly? Is it 90-10 or is it 50-50? Which is it closer to?
Senator, I don't know the exact number, but I would guess that our employee base skews left-leaning.
Thank you for that honesty. Mr. Dorsey, you start your...
So, with all that in context, we know we are living in an age of mass deception like the world has never seen before. And as a Bible-based Christian, I see, this is all outlined in the book of Revelation. The world will see a time of great darkness, spiritual darkness, which influences every other aspect of our lives, including, people's reasoning capacities. And that's what I see with the, I am 100%, just like I was 100% with the messaging behind the Trump campaign of America First, close the borders, no entangling alliances with these globalist agencies like the WHO, right? Trump went and defunded the WHO. And I was like, wow, there's something I can really stand behind. Even though at the time he was still basically fulfilling UN WHO mandates by declaring a state of emergency and kicking off Operation Warp Speed over the false premise of a pandemic. So despite all that, it sounded good on the exterior, right? Let's defund the WHO. Yeah, it's about time. These guys are the enemies of our republic. It is the WHO that pretty much every video that I've had banned is based upon going contrary to the, 2 tablets of stone written by the hand of the WHO health guidelines that you cannot question. And the first one, and I look back at it now, was pretty hilarious. All I did was make the statement that I am not going to comply with mask mandates, and that got me banned. So, if you can ban somebody after making a video of just simply stating they're not going to cover their face, you can ban people for just about anything. Now, I think the latest is the honk is the new hate speech, because in Ottawa, they're trying to ban truckers from honking because the Ottawans are so mentally damaged over these past 10 days of noise and ruckus and protesting for their own freedoms, right? And that's what you'll see news agencies like I think it's the CBC, it's basically the BBC of Canada, the head propaganda source. You'll see a video of them, and you know what, I know I'm skipping around a lot, but I got a lot of thoughts bubbling up in my head. It's been a while since I sat down and had a little chit chat, a little fireside chat with the Nightwatch N8 guy. I wish I had a fireplace, but yeah, it's a little chilly out. So you'll see them exploit the good natures of Canadians, right? Because I know a few Canadians, and for the most part, they're like some of the most chill, friendly, like almost incomfortably nice people out there. In fact, I've been watching this live streamer. I can't think of his name right now. I think it might be Ottawax. Yeah, Ottawax. He's got a huge amount of subscribers. Of course, this thing just shot through the roof. All the views for these guys located in that area. Unfortunately, I am not, and I don't plan on making a trip all the way out there to stand in the, minus 10 degree weather on average.
A carnival-like atmosphere, bouncy castles, saunas, and more.
This guy, he just reminds me of some of the other Canadians that I've met. He always, he'll have like 30,000 viewers, and he's like, you know what, you should, you should subscribe, or if you don't want to, that's fine too. That's just something an American would not say. It's like, hey, subscribe to my channel, man. Thanks, bye. But, you know, they got to make sure that they're not too forceful with their, don't want to rub somebody the wrong way. So they're really kind people for the most part. Canadians, you know, I'm not saying every one of them. I'm sure there's a few. In fact, I saw some of the controlled opposition counter-protest rallies over there in Ottawa, and those people are just being obnoxious, and I don't even believe that they're real people standing out there. I'm sure there's a few get caught up in it, but yeah, they're like literally waving signs like I heart mandates. And the other classic was sterilized white supremacist or something like that. So I'm like, where are these people's heads at, right? And so you'll see like the CBC roll out this poor distraught young lady, you know, and about all this psychological and emotional damage that she's been subject to over these last 10 days of protest. And it's like,
it's impossible to ignore.
Zexi Lee has had enough. She says Ottawa police and the city have failed.
We are literally begging for your help. We're begging for any kind of action, and it's come to the point where we feel that we need to do it ourselves because you are refusing to do so.
Lee is the plaintiff in a proposed class action lawsuit of Ottawa residents claiming up to $10 million in damages against organizers of the convoy, citing significant mental health effects and dangerous sound levels.
It's really a national security issue. There's, propane tanks everywhere. They're firing off fireworks in close proximity. Like, quite frankly, it's dangerous to those protesters themselves.
Ottawa police say they don't have the resources needed. Still, enforcement is ramping up. More tickets and fines are being handed out. Anyone bringing in gas and other supplies are now being threatened with potential arrest. Police say they convinced protesters to move a structure they had set up in the core, but earlier, organizers were undeterred.
The reality is we'll find another way around it. Also highly, highly questionable as to whether that's legal or not, and that gets back to the issue of charter rights versus some local municipal bylaw that says you're not allowed to pull a wagon down the street.
A carnival-like atmosphere, bouncy castles, saunas, and more, on top of safety concerns for emergency vehicles and growing claims of harassment towards citizens.
What would you want to tell these protesters if they're watching this tonight?
This is not peaceful. If you truly believe that this is peaceful, I would urge you to really listen to the people that you're subjecting this to.
I voiced my opinion to the truckers on the street. They're stuck in the snow. I said, how does it feel to be stuck in a city right now? A lot of the citizens of Ottawa and Centertown feel that they can't even leave their homes safely. I feel lucky enough that I can leave and go get coffee and go to the drugstore right now. But a lot of people in our city don't feel that privilege, honestly. And they're telling me that it's freedom for my mask. And I said, I'm happy to wear my mask. And they think that human rights are being taken away. I said, this isn't a human right. You have the right to choose. You have the right to not go to these places that require a mask. They just don't understand the impact that this is having on people here, I guess.
You're visibly shaking, your body is shaking, you are crying. Well, why is that?
Well, it's been a week of constant honking, constant hate in social media, walking just down the street, it's hate, people are being harassed for wearing masks. It's upsetting, it's emotionally draining right now, being here and not agreeing with them.
Man, they're so classic at just pinning the blame on their opponents for everything that they're guilty of, right? I mean, have you not been psychologically damaged and abused over the last 2 years straight through your media and your government lying to you every day about how fearful the pandemic is?
I think one of the things we all understand is just how frustrated everyone is. We're all frustrated. We're all sick and tired of restrictions, of mandates, of having to make sacrifices, of not being able to do the things we love. It's been 2 years, and it's really, really tiring for all of us. This government has been focused every step of the way on following the best science, following the best public health advice to keep as many people safe as possible. And quite frankly, it's worked. We've seen the curves lower in Canada than elsewhere. We've seen lower death rates. We've seen quicker economic recovery because Canadians stepped up, because Canadians got vaccinated. And I can understand frustrations with mandates, but mandates are the way to avoid further restrictions.
And how many deaths by despair can be directly tied to the news media?
China has identified the cause of the mysterious new virus.
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
There are fears a rapidly spreading virus has reached Australia.
This is a rapidly emerging situation where there is not a cause for alarm.
The first US case has been detected.
There's confirmation the coronavirus has reached Australia.
China is urging its citizens not to travel abroad as it struggles to contain the virus.
We will be standing up Christmas Island as a quarantine area.
Foreign nationals coming from China are now banned from entering the country.
I have today declared that the coronavirus presents a public health emergency in the United States.
The death toll now has risen above that of the SARS outbreak 17 years ago.
We now have a name for the disease, COVID-19.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody.
The Italian government tonight put the entire country on lockdown.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe.
From Italy this evening, it just gets worse. The death toll now worse than China.
What happened in Bondi was unacceptable.
12 years of perfect employment, it all blows up in 24 hours.
More than 3 billion people in almost 70 countries and territories have been asked to stay at home.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
We're asking everyone to work at home if possible, postpone unnecessary travel.
आज रात 12 बजे से संपूर्ण देश में.
So together, and with the rest of the world, we face this unprecedented challenge. For many, young and old, 2020 will be the toughest year of our lives.
We've got some breaking news to bring you, and it's to do with the Prince of Wales. He has tested positive for coronavirus.
The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has tested positive for coronavirus.
Countries around the world have now reported more than 1 million coronavirus cases.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been transferred to the intensive care unit.
The city may have to temporarily bury bodies on public land if they run out of morgue space.
Better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
Where I'm at with the truckers convoy is, yeah, it looks fun, you know, and I'd probably be there myself. You know, I was watching from last night. Man, it looks like people are freezing out there, though. It's like, dang, these are not fair weather patriots, right? And I'd probably agree with, 98% of what a lot of these people, these fringe, the few fringe,
the small fringe minority,
the misogynist, the racist, dancing around to Dr. Dre, Bob Marley, gangster rap. I thought that was the most hilarious idea that came to me. It's like you got all these white folk in Canada dancing around to this DJ they had out there on the street. It was just like a block party. It was looked like a lot of fun, actually, other than the cold. I'd totally be there if I was within driving range, but I'm not, so. I know that these tyrants, these petty little tyrants in office, need a clear signal, a clear message from their people, whom they should fear, because, where a government fears its people, you have freedom. Where the people fear their government, you have tyranny. And they need to have a healthy respect for their population and to stop treating us like they're cattle. And that's basically what's behind this whole agenda. It's that you don't have any bodily autonomy to say, no, I'm not going to put this in my body. They have the right, as the ranchers of this global plantation, they have the right to inject us with whatever they want to inject us with, and we don't have any legal ground on which to stand.
Ils sont extrémistes.
Qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. C'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens?
It was Time magazine that uncovered the 18-year-old photo from a yearbook at West Point Grey Academy in Vancouver, where Trudeau was teaching when he was 29 years old.
What I'm asking my audience is that we just analyze, not just ask ourselves, are we or are we not for the cause? I'm all for the cause of freedom, and I'm all for the cause of sending a clear message to these tyrants to back down. That's what I've been saying this for years now. But we need to examine the effect our actions take, because we are in an age of mass deception and social media manufactured populist uprisings. Okay, the high priest of statecraft they view the masses as their cattle, right? And they're using memes and ideas and resentment and anger, fear, of course, but also anger. I'm really angry too about what's going on in my own country. But I realize that acting out of fear or anger both suppress reason. And knowing that we are in a time of great deception, of great darkness on the earth, like the earth has never seen, biblically speaking, spiritually speaking, we need to be wise as serpents. Now, I just got done, and many of you got through, the way I wanted to put it, expressing our outrage during the BLM protests, right? Riots, shutting down of whole cities, occupation of whole, like Seattle, right? Chaz, Chop, whatever they want to call it. The Summer of Love, right? Where the cities were literally supplying protesters, with urinals and food and whatever else, right? Not so much in Canada, though, right? Right, eh? No, now they're taking their gasoline, arresting them. I think they're even finding or arresting people who were supplying them with gasoline. And so you can see obviously that there's a contrast. But what I'm asking is, can two different sides of the pendulum have completely different causes but have the same effect? Is what I'm asking. How is it any different to shut down our own supply chains, our own cities, under the name or the banner of freedom or anti-mandate, or whatever you want to call it? How is that any different than doing it over social justice or institutionalized racism, or whatever they wanted to conjure up as an excuse to vent their anger and outrage? Mind you, I'm not making the connection between the trucker convoy in Ottawa and anything remotely close to what was happening during the George Floyd BLM protests, because that was just off the hook, violent. People were killed. Cities were burned down. Businesses destroyed, burned literally to the ground. That's a big difference, right? What I am saying is that perhaps, maybe it's not the best way to go about it by disrupting our own, even potentially food chain. How is that going to help where we're at? How is that going to help us get back on our feet? How is that going to help us fight and be resilient against these globalist tyrants that have already captured all the governments of the world and does that not just fit right into the Great Reset and the destruction of the local economies and the monopolization of these massive transnationalist corporations like Amazon, like Bill Gates?
Well, 2021 was a very challenging year. The pandemic.
All the ones that profited to the tunes of tens and tens of billions of dollars during the lockdowns, while countless millions of other small businesses, including a minority, by the way, went under due to these illegal, unconstitutional, tyrannical, under the banner of public health, though. That's all that matters, right? Mandates. By these clowns in office that just follow marching orders from these globalist agencies like the WHO, the UN, the World Bank. These little bootlickers that get in office that just worship privilege and power, worship their masters, and couldn't care less about the little cattle, that, they might get a little upset now and then. They might have a little protest with some signs. I think the better way to go about it is to directly strike the snake at the head, right? Like the saying from Thoreau, what is it, every 1,000 hacking at the branches, there's one hacking at the root. And so what I'm saying is, we do need to make a clear message, but we need to be careful with what popular movement we join and ask ourselves, what is the effect? Sure, the cause is good. The cause is always good, and the devil is the master at making something really bad look good. And they will play, the black and the white squares, the Masonic symbolism, the good and the bad. You see it even in the Catholic cathedrals on the floors. The white pope and the black pope, they got to play both sides because they know that there's good and there's bad attributes in humanity, but they will use both to forward their agenda. And so I'm saying I stand with the truckers, with the trucker convoy, and they're probably some of the best people on this earth. I saw the the farmers, just insane stuff, ramming tractors through these barricades. I mean, these people are passionate, obviously, right, about all this. I saw the cowboys rolling out next, though. That might make a mess, all the horses walking through Ottawa. But yeah, it's quite a show to watch. And what I'm saying is we just need to be careful. If this spreads everywhere, it's been brought up recently that it might be a Super Bowl convoy. You know what? That might not be so bad. But what I'm saying is if we have these, like on a George Floyd level, and if you listen to the end of Event 201, where they talk about the distrust towards government and the civil breakdown of society could last for decades, I think that's kind of what we're seeing unfold right now. And what I'm asking is, does that not play into the plan? These guys are not, this is not just a few smart people pulling the strings here. I think ultimately on the spiritual level that they are listening to the Legion, right? They are listening to wickedness in high places. The mastermind of all masterminds, the guy who has been studying human nature for thousands and thousands of years, the entity, the adversary, Satan himself. That is the one who's the mastermind behind this whole thing. And that's why there's so many prongs behind this whole agenda. It blows your mind. If you take that red pill, if you start going down the rabbit hole, there are so many angles that you can think of how this really puts the noose around all of our heads. And the more we resist, I think that's how they have it set up. The more we resist, the more it constricts this New World Order noose. And the only way that it ends is when the lies get exposed. People stop listening to these liars. And again, yeah, they need to have a real strong message from their own people that, you know what, you need to fear us more than your globalist masters. And I'm not one to say I know exactly how to send that message, okay? But by shutting down our own cities, damaging our own local economies, and potentially creating quite a lot of chaos and blowback in society if you do threaten the supply chain, right? If this blows up on a BLM protest level of every major city around the nation just being shut down, how is that going to affect our economies? How will that not play in to the Great Reset agenda of monopolizing power to the guys who already have so much power they're not even affected by these protests? They're not affected by a supply chain crisis. They're already good, you know? They're not affected by inflation of the money supply. They're not affected by shutting down production facilities. They're not affected by just completely shutting down the whole capitalist system in general, you know, the whole economy. These guys are beyond reach. These guys have so much power, so much wealth amassed. These guys, the ones who have captured governments worldwide, and I won't name all of them, but they're the Rothschilds, the Bill Gates. Ultimately, I think, at the very top, according to the way I read my Bible, the harlot, the scarlet harlot, who classically early Americans identified, historically Protestant reformers identified as Rome. You know, the woman that sits on 7 hills of Rome. Conveniently, you know, the Pope recently got in bed with the Rothschilds and all these major Fortune 500 transnationalist corporations to create what they want to call inclusive capitalism. And basically, you know, under the banner of, you know, we're going to make a more equitable and just world, they're basically monopolizing more power unto themselves and penalizing anybody that doesn't jump through their little hoops based upon the climate crisis or the climate change. So where am I going with this? I just want everybody to be wise as serpents. Question everything. You know, anytime that there is a populist movement, and anytime that there's a massive popular movement in general that is exploding all over social media, just ask yourself, you know, just plan ahead a little bit and ask yourself, you know, what will be the long-term effects of these actions? Right? Does this really harm our enemies, or does this do more harm to our fellow citizens and to ourselves? You know, a lot of these people have nothing to lose because they've lost their jobs. You know, one guy I heard in an interview, you know, he couldn't, because of the vaccine mandates, he was going to lose his house. You know, he couldn't pay his mortgage. He hadn't worked for months. And their stories need to be heard. And this issue needs to be, you know, pushed back against, obviously. I've been trying to do it on my own little small sphere of influence on multiple platforms, and highly censored, of course, on YouTube, on the videos that I have put out. But I don't know, let's just keep in mind the potential harmful side effects of shutting down big cities and threatening the supply chains. And, you know, are you making more enemies than you're making friends? When you know, how is this harming Trudeau when he's off on vacation somewhere because he caught COVID, right? Convenient timing there to bug out of the public eye there, Trudeau. But how does this harm, you know, the little puppets in power? you could say it does some damage to their public relations, but you could also say it kind of justifies this narrative that the unvaxxed, the anti-mandate, are a bit of a terrorist organization, right? Terrorizing whole cities. I know they're mostly peaceful, and everybody there is, for the most part, just having a good time. And there's no really serious violence yet. It's nothing like the Chaz, like I said. Not making those apples to apples comparisons there. But I can guarantee you the longer this draws out and the more angry that people get and the more desperate the situation gets, the more society kind of breaks down into anarchy, you will see a few nutballs, nut jobs pop out and probably commit a few violent acts. And that's all they need to close everything down. That's already the argument that they used to seize their GoFundMe account that had something like $10 million, which is insane. From what I gathered, they didn't even really specify exactly where those funds were going. But yeah, that's how passionate, a lot of people are out there. If I could just get a little crumb of that for the Nightwatch show, that'd be amazing. I'm just saying. But yeah, let's support the little guys, the censored guys, the voices that you feel need to be heard, not just mine. I'm just plugging as I have to do because nobody else will plug for me. So yeah, I have to become a troll sometimes. But yeah, eventually, if things go on, you will have a few acts of violence, and then that will give that justification to paint the anti-mandate, anti-vax, whatever you want to call them, fringe, right, as Trudeau put it. It'll give them the opportunity to paint them as basically terrorists, homegrown terrorists. Terrorism being defined as using fear and intimidation or violence in order to promote a political cause.
No one was arrested today. At this point, there's another standstill. And stranded truck drivers are losing time and money as the blockade drags on. CTV's Turia Isri reports.
In just a few days, protesters have cost the Canadian economy hundreds of millions of dollars.
The ones who want to make a statement chose Coots because this is where it's going to hurt us.
Around 20,000 trucks pass through the Coots border every month, doing $10 billion in trade between Canada and the U.S. With each passing hour of the blockade, losses are piling up. This economist says $2 billion is a conservative estimate.
There is corn flour, there's bananas, there's you name it, and there's all types of fruit out there which is not moving. This is totally unheard of.
Food shipments could spoil, including 150 truckloads of Canadian beef. Fuel is also going to waste, and stranded truckers have few options.
I'm of the libertarian mindset that says you're free to do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't harm others. Your lifestyle choices, it's not the business of government to legislate morality. But if people's version of freedom impedes or negatively affects the freedoms of others, that's not a good thing. And that just gives the state more power to demonize a movement such as the Patriot movements or the Trucker Convoy, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that that's what's going on in Ottawa, although, you could say that some of the local businesses might be impacted by shutting down whole highways. Obviously, some of the people who live in the city are probably not getting the best rest, unless they have to stick in earplugs every night. I don't know what's going on exactly, but I'm just saying when you make your freedom so obnoxious that it does harm to others, then you kind of lose ground, right? Because you're setting yourself and your rights above the rights of others, which is, which you get from the left all the time, right? Through the social justice movement and the separation of class strata and minorities on pedestals, and the white people way down there in the bottom of the totem pole of privilege, to counteract the, of course, their logic, to counteract the years upon years of injustice and white privilege of the past, right? So the libertarian mindset says, we all have the same, and the biblical mindset says we all have the same God-given rights. And you're free to, you answer to God ultimately when it comes to moral issues. But if you infringe upon somebody else's ability to pursue happiness, to live out their lives and to exercise their own freedoms and to live comfortably and unharmed by others, then your freedoms are no longer freedoms. They're infringements upon someone else's freedoms. Just some things to think about. You always have to, these people are thinking, they have think tanks and they communicate with legions, okay? Basically, demons, okay? Higher beings, okay? I'm just saying you have to think, a few steps ahead before you jump in full bore behind a movement. I'm just trying to be a voice of reason here, that's all. But you know where I stand on freedom and against these tyrants. I've been faithful to that original intended slogan for the official seal of the United States that later became the Thomas Jefferson's personal seal, which reads, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." That's where I stand. God first, and then respect of authority, earthly authority. But ultimately, the King of Kings, who sits on the one true throne in heaven, is the one who alone deserves our obedience. The one who alone should bring us to our knees. And the one who ultimately, to whom alone we will all answer for in how we responded to tyranny, injustice in this lifetime. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope that made sense. Again, I never say this, but please subscribe if you haven't. Hit the notification bell if you want to see future videos. I got a ton of videos that have not been seen nearly enough because I've been pouring most of my energy into the enemy's platforms, and so I need to, which I've been doing lately, pouring more energy into alternatives like the BitChute channel and others. But if you could, buy me a coffee. I don't have a mug with me, but toss me a couple dollars now and then. This keeps me, any kind of support financially will help in the cause of keeping me producing more content, because resources around here are drying up pretty quickly, and everybody needs money to live, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. God bless. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time. I'll have more shortly. There's surely more interesting news on the horizon. Probably tomorrow. I'll just check the Twitter and there'll be like 10 more stories to cover, and I won't have the time to do it, but you know what? I try to cover what's most important, and try to do it thoughtfully, not just knee-jerk. Try to think things through in the context of history and the Bible, and my own personal quest for truth. And perhaps you can identify with some of the conclusions that I come up with. Anyway, thanks everybody. God bless. Nightwatch N8, signing out.
On COVID, people.